Hi class, today we are going to be looking at different types of data collection. So these are different ways that we can collect data that we use for different purposes. So the first one that we are going to look at is a sample study. Okay, a sample study is a study that obtains data from a subset of a population. We call that subset of a population a sample. Okay, a subset just means a smaller group of the large. So if there are 3,000 students here at Westfield High School and we want to do a sample study, we are going to not survey all 3,000, but we are going to do a subset, a sample population, which might only be 500. Okay, this is then used to help us make predictions about the entire population. So for example, if we want to find out the amount of time students spend on the computer each day, right? There's no way we could ask every single student, maybe we're looking just in Indiana, even if we're just looking in Indiana, right? There's no way we could ask every single student how much time they spent on the computer each day. So instead what we'll do is we will ask a fraction of those people. We'll ask a smaller group of them. Okay, the best way to find that smaller group of people to give us reliable data is to do that through a random sample. Okay, and a random sample is when each person in the large population, in the large group, has an equal chance of being part of the sample. Okay, now this is a whole other discussion of deciding what's the best way to get a random sample. But really getting a random sample is really kind of tricky. Okay, so we might think, oh, well, if I ask 100 students at Westfield High School and I ask every third person that walks by Mrs. McKinney's door. Okay, that's not really a random sample because every student in Westfield High School does not walk by Mrs. McKinney's door. So every single person in that entire population needs to have the opportunity of being picked equally in that sample. So we often think about this as either picking names from a hat, or using some type of number generator. Okay, a number generator is like a computer that will give us a random number and tell us what number person on the list to pick. Now, that isn't saying that we can't use what we call a non-random sample. Okay, it is possible that we could do a sample study and ask a non-random set of people. Okay, and that might be every third person that walks by Mrs. McKinney's door, or all of the students who eat a lunch. Okay, that's not random, but it is still a sample. Okay, so if we are doing a sample study, it's in some way, shape, or form, we are having an end goal of finding out some question and getting that answered by asking a smaller population of the large. Okay. The next type of study that we could look at is an observational study. An observational study is a study that looks at how two things are related to each other. Okay, so we'll have two things going on in this. Okay, the person doing the study has no control over the events and only observes or records the data as it is. Now, one of the things we have to be careful of is in this we see the word observe. Okay, and we have to make sure we understand that it's not strictly limited to something you might see with your eyes. Okay, but this is looking at how two things are related. So for example, if we want to find out how blood pressure is related to how much time students spend on the computer, right? Up here in a sample survey, we were only finding out how much time students spent on a computer. Now we want to see how the two things are related to each other. Okay, how blood pressure is related to how much time, right? So we have this relationship piece that we are looking at. We might do an observational study okay, where we ask people how much time they spend on the computer and then take their blood pressure, right? We're not doing anything to affect their blood pressure or to affect how much time they spend on the computer. We're just simply recording the data as it is. The third type of study that we can do is one, hopefully we're all familiar with this word, is an experiment. Okay, an experiment is a controlled study, okay, in which the researcher attempts to understand cause and effect. So there is a relationship, but we are controlling part of the study to try and show a cause and effect. Okay, the study is controlled in the sense that the researcher either controls how subjects are assigned to groups and/or which treatments each group receives. Okay, so maybe we want to see if time on the computer affects blood pressure. So to do that, we would assign certain groups of people to spend varying amounts of time on the computer each day, right? We are actually telling people you can only spend so much time on the computer. We are controlling some aspect of the survey. That's what makes it an experiment. Now, in each of these situations, whether it's a sample study, whether it's observational study, or whether it is an experiment, once we have the data, whatever we collect from our study, we can then make an inference. Okay, an inference is a conclusion that we are going to draw from the evidence that we are being presented with our data. So it's a conclusion that can be drawn from evidence and reasoning. So not what our gut tells us, not what we just think is the best, but we're doing it from the evidence that we are provided with through the study. So let's look at a couple examples over here and see if we can decide what type of study it is and maybe if there's any inferences that we can draw. Okay, so in option A here, Coach Scanlon is interested in seeing what effect utilizing core time will have on his soccer players' grades. For the first 6 weeks of the trimester, for the first 6 weeks of trimester 2, he assigns every sophomore soccer player a supervised core to work on their academics. At the end of those 6 weeks, he compares the grades of the sophomore soccer players to their first trimester grades. Okay, so in this situation, Coach Scanlon is assigning every soccer player a supervised core. So Coach Scanlon is having control over what the people are doing. He's telling them what they have to do. So if we are talking about a situation where we are controlling or assigning where people go, we say that this is an experiment. Now, we don't have any of the results here in front of us. I would hope that maybe we would be able to make the inference after collecting this data that students who work on academic and core time are improving on their academic grades. But we don't have anything here, so we don't have any evidence to actually give us something that we could base that inference off of. We would need to have some data there to actually have a solid inference. Okay, so let's look at B. Students want to know the favorite color of students at WHS. So we have some students and they're trying to find out what the favorite color is of students here at Westfield High School. These students used PowerSchool to generate 100 student ID numbers to ask those students their favorite color. Okay, so we're going to 100 students and we're asking them their favorite color. There's no relationship we're looking for. We're just simply asking students what their favorite color is. Okay, if this is a situation where we're just finding out favorite color, we would say that this is a sample study. Now, we can also decide if this sample is random or non-random. So these students took all of the student ID numbers and got PowerSchool to generate 100 of the different student ID numbers. So if they are using a number generator, something that is randomly pulling those student ID numbers, we would say that this is a random sample. Now again, it doesn't mean that it's the only way that we could get that sample. So they could also choose to just ask 100 students in their lunch period. They could choose to ask 100 students who are in all of their classes. We're just saying that in this situation, this is random. If they chose to ask 100 students at lunch, that would be non-random. So this is the information that they then got. So we want to see if we can make an inference from this data. Okay, so if I look through this data, the inference to me would be that blue is the most preferred color by students at Westfield High School. Is there 2 F's in that? Maybe only 1 F and 2, or I don't know. Okay, so we're saying that students prefer, okay, look in here, it's 1 F and 2 R's, so we know. Okay, we're saying not just because it was our gut, not just because we think so, but because when we look at this 7, 9, 11, 5, it is the largest number across all of these. Now we could also go through and add these all up if those numbers were closer, but I can tell by eyeballing it that this is going to be the largest category. And so blue is the preferred color of students at Westfield High School. If we look at C says researchers want to see if exercising on an elliptical or a treadmill leads to more weight loss. They find 100 people who exercise on a treadmill and 100 people who exercise on an elliptical, and then record how much weight they lose over the course of 8 weeks. Okay, so we are looking for a relationship in this, right? We are looking for if it leads to, if exercising on an elliptical or a treadmill is leading to weight loss, right? This is a relationship. So now we have to decide if anything is being controlled. Is there someone who is deciding what piece of equipment they work on, maybe how long they work out on it, maybe they work on it multiple times a day, any of those types of pieces. And we don't have any of that, right? Nothing is being controlled. They're just finding 100 people somewhere who exercise on a treadmill and telling them to exercise on a treadmill just like they are. So because there is nothing being controlled in this situation, we would say that this is observational. Right? All we are doing is observing if weight loss is happening over the course of 8 weeks based on what the people are already doing.